There's a plant growing in your garden right now that has more omega-3 fatty acids per leaf than a piece of salmon, and you're probably about to spray it with poison. I'm serious. While you're spending $40 on wild-caught Atlantic salmon at Whole Foods, there's a better source of omega-3 cis growing between the cracks in your driveway. For free. The same plant your grandfather ate during the Depression. The same plant ancient Persians cultivated 4,000 years ago. The same plant that NASA studied for Mars missions because it's practically indestructible. Its name? Purslane. And the herbicide industry has spent decades convincing you it's your enemy. Now before you think this is some hippie nonsense about eating weeds, let me hit you with the numbers. 100 grams of purslane contains about 400 milligrams of omega-3 fatty acids. That's more than most fish. The American Heart Association recommends 250 to 500 milligrams per day for cardiovascular health. You could meet that with a couple handfuls of something growing wild in your yard, something you're killing. But here's where it gets weird. Really weird. This plant shouldn't even exist. At least not the way it does. See, purslane breaks the rules. The fundamental rules of how plants are supposed to work. And I'm not talking about some minor botanical quirk. I'm talking about the kind of evolutionary adaptation that makes scientists stop and say, wait, how is that even possible? Let's back up for a second. You know how plants work, right? Photosynthesis, sunlight, carbon dioxide, chlorophyll, and boom, you get sugars and oxygen. Plants have been doing this for about 500 million years. It's a pretty well-established system. There are two main types. C3 photosynthesis, which is what most plants use, and C4 photosynthesis, which is better for hot, dry conditions. Different plants, different strategies. You pick one. Except purslane said, why not both? This little succulent does what's called CAM photosynthesis at night, then switches to C4 during the day. It's like having a car that runs on gas and electricity, but way more impressive because cars didn't evolve that ability over millions of years to survive extinction events. Scientists have a term for plants that do this. They call them CAM cycling C4 plants. There are exactly 7 known species that can pull this off. 7 out of 391,000 known plant species. Purslane is one of them. What does this mean in practical terms? It means purslane can thrive in conditions that would kill almost anything else. Drought? No problem. It closes its stomata during the day to prevent water loss, and does its carbon dioxide intake at night when it's cooler. Heat wave. Perfect. It switches to C4 mode and handles temperatures that would cook your tomatoes. Poor soil? Even better. It doesn't need much. During the Dust Bowl in the 1930s, when crops across the American Midwest were turning to dust and blowing away, purslane was still growing, still edible, still nutritious. People who knew what they were looking at survived on it. The ones who thought it was just a weed, they had a rougher time. But let's talk about what's actually in this plant. Because the omega-3 content is just the beginning. Purslane has more vitamin A than carrots, more vitamin C than oranges, magnesium, calcium, potassium, and iron. It contains betalain alkaloids, which are powerful antioxidants you usually only find in beets. It has more melatonin than any other plant tested. Yes, melatonin. The stuff you take supplements for to sleep better. This plant makes it naturally. There's a study from the University of Texas, published in the Journal of the American College of Nutrition, that analyzed the nutritional content of 43 garden crops. They compared modern vegetables to their historical nutritional values from 50 years ago. The results? Almost everything we eat today has significantly less nutrition than it did in 1950. Less protein, less calcium, less iron, less vitamin C. We've bred crops for size, for shelf life, for appearance, and we've accidentally bred out the nutrition. But purslane? Nobody was selectively breeding purslane. It's been the same plant for thousands of years. The same nutritional profile. And that profile is ridiculous. Here's where the story gets darker. Because purslane used to be everywhere. The ancient Greeks ate it. The Romans ate it. Persian doctors prescribed it for everything from headaches to intestinal problems. It shows up in medieval European texts as a cultivated garden vegetable. Thomas Jefferson. Yes. The Thomas Jefferson grew purslane in his gardens at Monticello. It was a standard salad green in America until about the 1940s. Then something changed. The herbicide industry happened. Chemical companies had a problem. They'd been making nerve agents and other chemical weapons for the war effort. Now the war was over. They had factories, patents, and chemistry knowledge, but no customers. Someone had the brilliant idea to rebrand these chemicals as pesticides and herbicides. Same compounds, different marketing. And purslane became public enemy number one. Why? Because it grows everywhere. It's the perfect villain for selling weed killer. You can't have a thriving herbicide industry without weeds to kill. And you can't convince farmers and homeowners to buy your products unless they believe certain plants are the enemy. The thing is, purslane isn't just hardy. It's almost spiteful in its resilience. You can spray it, and it comes back. You can pull it, and it regrows from tiny root fragments. You can cut it, and the pieces you leave behind will literally root themselves and start new plants. Some commercial herbicides actually list purslane specifically on their labels because it's that hard to kill. So the industry did what any good industry does when faced with an unkillable competitor. They changed the narrative. Purslane wasn't food anymore. It was a weed, an invasive pest, something to eradicate. And it worked brilliantly. By the 1960s, most Americans had no idea purslane was edible. The generation that remembered eating it during the Depression was aging out. The new generation was being told by experts that a weed-free lawn was the dream. And purslane, growing enthusiastically in every garden and lawn in America, was the enemy of that dream. But here's the thing about truth. It doesn't go away just because you rebrand it. They couldn't help it. The plant was too weird, too resilient, too nutritionally dense to ignore. A study published in the Journal of Lipid Research in 2001 found that purslane had the highest omega-3 content of any leafy vegetable tested. The researchers from the University of Texas and MIT were specifically looking at alpha-linolenic acid, or ALA, which is the plant-based omega-3 that your body converts into the same compounds you get from fish oil. Another study, this one from 2014 in the journal Scientific Reports, showed that purslane consumption significantly reduced oxidative stress markers in humans. Oxidative stress is linked to basically every chronic disease you can name: heart disease, cancer, diabetes, Alzheimer's. The antioxidants in purslane were measurably protecting cells from damage. Then there's the Greek study. This one's fascinating. Researchers in Crete noticed something odd. The island had some of the lowest heart disease mortality rates in the world. Lower than the rest of Greece. Lower than most of Europe. They started investigating what made the Cretan diet different. And they found purslane. Traditional Cretan diets included purslane as a regular vegetable, not as a superfood. Just as food. They ate it in salads, cooked it like spinach, added it to stews, and their cardiovascular health was exceptional. The researchers published their findings in multiple journals throughout the 1990s and 2000s, showing correlations between purslane consumption and reduced heart disease risk. Greece, by the way, still eats purslane. So does Turkey. So does Mexico. So does much of the Middle East and Mediterranean. It's called verdolagas in Mexico, where it's a standard ingredient in certain soups and salads. In Turkey, it's semisotu, and you'll find it at farmers' markets as a premium vegetable. But in America, it's Roundup's problem child. Let's talk about how purslane actually grows. Because this is where it gets almost absurd. This plant germinates in soil temperatures between 90 and 105 degrees Fahrenheit. Those are temperatures when most of your garden is struggling. Your lettuce has bolted. Your spinach is done. Your tomatoes are stressed. And purslane is just getting started. It can germinate in soil that's been compacted by foot traffic. It thrives in the disturbed soil of garden beds and pathways. It doesn't need fertilizer. It doesn't need supplemental water in most climates. It produces about 50,000 seeds per plant. Those seeds can remain viable in the soil for up to 40 years. 40 years. You could pull up every purslane plant on your property today, and the seeds in your soil could still sprout in the year 2065. From an evolutionary perspective, purslane is winning, spectacularly. While we've been breeding tomatoes that can't survive without weekly fertilizer applications and consistent watering schedules, purslane has been thriving on neglect. And here's the kicker: that resilience. That ability to survive drought and heat in poor soil, that's exactly what we need right now. Climate change is making growing seasons more unpredictable. Droughts are longer. Heat waves are more intense. Soil quality is declining, and we're spending billions trying to engineer crops that can handle these conditions. Meanwhile, purslane has been handling these conditions for millennia. NASA actually studied purslane in the 1980s as a potential crop for space missions and Mars colonization. The reasoning was simple. You need food crops that can handle stress, that don't need perfect conditions, that pack maximum nutrition into minimum space. Purslane checked every box. It's efficient, nutritious, and nearly indestructible. The research went nowhere, by the way. Not because purslane didn't work. It worked great. But there's no money in promoting a plant that grows for free and doesn't need any inputs. Nobody's getting rich off purslane. And that's exactly the problem. Let me paint you a picture of what your garden could look like. It's July. It's 95 degrees. You haven't watered in a week because there's a drought restriction in place. Your tomatoes are wilting. Your cucumbers have given up. Your lettuce died a month ago. And there, growing enthusiastically between your bean rows, is purslane. Thick, succulent stems, tiny yellow flowers, leaves so plump with water they almost glow. You could pick a handful, rinse it off, and have it in a salad 20 minutes later. That salad would give you more omega-3 Cs than a serving of salmon, more vitamin A than a carrot, more vitamin C than an orange, and more antioxidants than most of the vegetables you intentionally planted. Or you could spray it with glyphosate and go buy salmon at the grocery store for $18 a pound. Your choice. Now I know what you're thinking. Why isn't everyone growing it? Why isn't it in grocery stores? Why did my grandfather never mention it? The answer is complicated, but it boils down to this. Our food system isn't designed to promote plants that don't need industrial support. Purslane doesn't need pesticides, doesn't need herbicides, doesn't need irrigation systems, doesn't need to be replanted every year because it self-seeds, doesn't need processing or packaging because it grows where people live. There's no infrastructure to capture profit from purslane. If there's no profit mechanism, there's no promotion. It's that simple. But here's what's changing. Studies keep coming out. The nutritional data keeps getting confirmed. The climate keeps getting more unpredictable. And people are starting to notice that this weed they've been fighting is actually more useful than half the vegetables they're trying to grow. There are farmers markets in California where purslane now sells for $6 a pound. Chefs in New York are putting it on menus. Seed companies are starting to sell cultivated varieties with bigger leaves and longer stems. Although honestly, the wild stuff is just as good. Especially older gardeners who remember when food actually tasted like something and vegetables were actually nutritious, are starting to ask questions. Why am I pulling this up? Why am I poisoning my soil to kill something edible? Why am I spending money on supplements when the solution is growing in my garden path? Those are good questions. Really good questions. Here's what you need to know if you want to start eating purslane instead of poisoning it. First, identify it correctly. Purslane has thick, reddish stems and succulent, paddle-shaped leaves. The stems are smooth, not hairy. The leaves grow in clusters. When you break a stem, it's juicy inside, almost like a tiny cactus. There's a toxic look-alike called spurge, but it's easy to tell them apart. Spurge has milky sap when you break it. Purslane has clear sap. Spurge has hairy stems. Purslane has smooth stems. Second, harvest it before it gets too big. Young purslane is tender and slightly tangy, with a lemony flavor. Older purslane gets tougher, though it's still perfectly edible when cooked. Third, use it fresh or cooked. Raw. It's fantastic in salads. It adds a crunchy texture and a slightly tart, refreshing taste. Cooked, it's similar to spinach, but holds up better to heat. You can sauté it, add it to soups, stir-fry it, or steam it. In Mexico, they cook it with pork and tomatillos. In Greece, they mix it with feta and olive oil. In Turkey, they make it into a yogurt salad. Don't spray your garden with herbicides if you want to eat purslane. This should be obvious, but chemical residues last. If you've been using Roundup on your property, give it a season or two before you start harvesting. The taste might surprise you. Most people expect weeds to be bitter or unpleasant. Purslane isn't. It's mild, slightly tangy, almost citrusy. Kids usually like it. It's crunchy, it's fun to eat, and unlike spinach or kale, you don't have to convince anyone it's good for them. It just tastes good. There's something profoundly strange about a world where we spend billions engineering nutrition into crops, fortifying foods with synthetic vitamins, and creating supplements to make up for nutritional deficiencies, while simultaneously poisoning one of the most nutritious plants on Earth because we've been told it's a weed. It's like burning money to stay warm while standing next to a fireplace. The solution is right there. We're just not seeing it. Or maybe we're seeing it, but we've been told not to believe our eyes. Your grandmother probably knew about purslane. Your great-grandmother definitely did. Somewhere in the last 70 years we forgot. Or we were made to forget. Because there's no money in remembering. But memory is coming back. Search interest in purslane has increased 300% in the last 5 years. Gardening forums are full of people asking, wait, I can eat this. The answer is yes. You can. You should. And once you start, you'll wonder why you ever thought it was a problem. Climate change is making traditional agriculture harder. Water is scarcer. Heat waves are more common. Soil degradation is accelerating. Evolved over millions of years to handle exactly these conditions, growing abundantly wherever humans disturb the soil. Maybe that's not a coincidence. Maybe purslane grows where we garden because it's supposed to. Maybe it's been trying to tell us something for 4,000 years, and we've been too busy selling herbicides to listen. So next time you see purslane in your garden, before you reach for the spray bottle, consider this: that weed has more omega-3 zest than salmon, more antioxidants than blueberries, and more resilience than almost any crop you're intentionally growing. It's free, it's nutritious, and it's been waiting patiently for you to remember what your ancestors knew. The plant's not the problem. The forgetting is.